What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Young Electrician Podcast. My name is Ruben Young, aka the Young Electrician. Here in this podcast, we like to see electricians grow, not just in the field, but also in their personal lives. We believe that your personal life and your work life shouldn't compete, but complement each other. With that said, let's hop right into this episode. This episode is going to be on 5 things you should know when going in to take the Journeyman exam test. These are going to be 5 tips that help me out, and I'm sure going to help you out too. So hang tight and let's hop right into it. Okay, so quick update, guys. I have been trying to get my contracting company up and going. You guys know I got a C10 contracting license a couple of months ago, and I've been working on getting my company started, getting some employees hired, getting some guys working. So that's all its own crazy thing in and of itself. I also work a full-time electrical job for somebody else, so I do that as well to keep the bills paid, and I do this podcast. So I kind of got a lot of things to juggle right now, and I've been having some technical issues with my laptop, so I kind of don't know how to fix them. So it's kind of been on the back burner, so my apologies. Hopefully I'll be able to fix it soon, and we'll be up and running with more interviews again. But until then, I'll be doing these shorter episodes where I kind of just share stuff, kind of whatever's on my head for that week. So, okay, so let's hop into this. So, tip number 1. Now, when you go in to take the exam, your test doesn't start automatically. The timer doesn't start when you sit down. Before you actually take the exam, they're going to give you some preparation questions, which are going to get you familiarized with how to use their system for answering questions, reading questions, marking questions, etc. So during that time, you can utilize it to mark up your code book. When you go in there, they're going to give you these little sticky note little tab things that you could put on the code book. During that time, go and tag some of the tables that you're going to want to find quickly. Some of the sections of the code book you're going to be going to a lot during the exam, or you want to find quickly. I've heard this from quite a few people, and it's a very beneficial thing to do, because when you're test taking, you don't want to waste time trying to find a section that you knew where it was at, but now it's kind of hard to find. Pages are getting stuck together. Where the heck is this at? If you have a tab there, it's going to be easier for you to just flip to that page. And you could do this before the time even starts, so that's awesome. I actually didn't do this. I did something different when I took the test. I didn't want to waste time in the beginning. I wanted to get into the exam. So what I figured I would do was, once I got to a section, when I'm looking for an answer, when a particular question took me to a section I knew I would go back to, then I would tag it. So if I knew I was going to go back to like hazardous locations, once I got there, I would just put a tag there, and it's like, okay, it'll be easy to get back here. So utilize this time. You're going to want to do things in preparation when you sit down that are going to save you time later. Putting these tabs in particular sections will save you time, whether you do it the way that I did it, just while you're going through the code book, answering questions, tagging stuff you'll come back to, or you want to take that time before the exam starts just to tag stuff. Either way is fine. The second thing, and this is also before you actually start the exam, you have a scratch paper. With that scratch paper, you're going to have a pencil, and I recommend writing down equations, writing down things that you don't want to have just, a memory block thing, brain fog, brain fart, whatever you want to call it, and just forget something. You want to write down equations that you want to remember and reference easily. Some of the things that I wrote down was the PEEPS cheat sheet. If you guys go on my YouTube channel, you guys will see me put down this thing called PEEPS, and it's a cheat sheet that gives you all of the ohms law equations. And I found it very useful because if I needed an equation, I could just look down and everything I needed was right there. Now, I have since changed my ideas about this. You don't need the entire PEEPS cheat sheet. You just need the first two. And they're the ones I think we're all familiar with when it comes to Ohm's law. And that is pi and, which is power divided by amperage times voltage. And that little pie chart is really important. I would mark that down. And then the other one is voltage divided by resistance times amperage. These are pretty much the two that you're going to need. So I would write those down on the cheat sheet just for reference. Something else that I wrote down on my cheat sheet was the constant of copper, which is 12.9 for the test. So what that means is, or what that's for, is when you're calculating voltage drop. I knew when I was calculating voltage drop, I might forget that number, the constant of copper. And I don't want to have a brain fart, forget it, and either get the answer wrong or take longer than I need to answer that question. So I wrote, 12.9 constant of copper, and then I wrote the equation, or at least my little reference equation for voltage drop, which is 2 kil over cm, which is circular mil. 2 kil stands for, the 2 stands for single phase, which is 2 conductors. Kil stands for, K is for copper. Not sure why it's for copper, but that's just the way it is. So that K stands for copper. The I stands for amperage. The L stands for length. And that is basically your phase type, which is either single phase or 3 phase times copper times length times amperage. So, and then what you do is you take that number and you divide it by the circular mil to find your voltage drop. I won't get into all that, but that's just kind of a quick little overview. So I had that written down, and I had 2 kil over cm written down. I also wrote down 3.732, which is the square root of 3. Now, when you're dealing with 3-phase circuits, sometimes you're going to need the square root of 3 to answer the question. So I just wrote it down, square root of 3, 3.732. Burned in my brain now. That's pretty much all I wrote down. Those are the things that I wanted to remember. So I wrote those things down so I could quickly reference them. So utilize that time, utilize that scratch paper, write down things you want to remember. And as you're studying and as you're prepping leading up to the exam date, you're going to find things that you're like, okay, I'm going to write that down. That's an easy way to remember that equation. I'm going to write that down. And, these are things that are only going to help you not waste time answering questions. Okay. So the third thing is, and I say this anytime I talk about taking the exam, don't spend longer than a minute and a half on each question. Now, the reason being is there are questions designed to trip you up. There are questions that are time eaters. It wants to eat your time. And again, I have to say this, that same time, that 5 minutes you waste trying to answer a question you might get wrong anyways, you could have answered 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 questions that were way easier. And isn't it better to get those other 5 questions correct and this one wrong than it is to possibly get that one right but lose time that you won't even be able to really find the answers for these other ones? So I hope that makes sense. Don't waste time looking for answers. If it's taking longer than a minute 30 seconds, guess and skip it. Mark it to come back later. Now, I'm telling you, if you're spending 1 minute to a minute and 30 seconds on each question, the ones that you skip, you will have like an hour left at the end of the exam. And you'll be able to go back and answer those marked questions. And this is what I did. If I didn't know it, if I couldn't find it within a minute, whatever, guess. I got a quarter of a chance of guessing the right one. Screw it. I guess, I move on. And then at the end, I had an entire hour to go back. And out of the 15 questions I marked, I was able to find 14 of them. in the code book, I was able to find them because I had the freedom of knowing I'm confident those other, 85 questions I got right. I found them in either the code book, word for word, or I did the equation, I did the math 1-2 times, and I know I got it right. So I was highly confident. So when I got to those last 15 questions, it's like, let me just see if I could make these odds of passing better by finding some of these. And I had a whole hour to do it. So I recommend don't spend longer than 1 minute to 1 minute 30 seconds on each question. And you're going to notice some of these questions you're going to answer in like 15 seconds. You're going to know the answer to the question. You'll be like, I know that. Bam. What kind of wire size do I need for 20 volts? 12 American wire gauge. Bam, done. Look at that. 5 seconds. Moving on to the next question. So don't waste your time on those hard questions. There are going to be a lot of questions that are going to be easy for you to answer, and it's better for you to just answer those easier ones. All right, moving on. Next tip. If you get a question that asks you, it's something like this. If you are troubleshooting a house that's built prior to 1954 and they have a panel whose brand is Federal Pacific and they have all these issues and you're troubleshooting it, what should you do? Now the answer is replace the panel. The answer is replace the panel. It doesn't matter, flickering lights, losing legs, whatever the problem is. The answer is replace the panel. And I can't really remember the reason why. They're very old panels. I don't think they make replacement parts for them, and they're going to constantly cause problems. So for whatever reason it is, you replace them. I remember when I was taking my prep course, and they told me this. It was one of the questions on the practice test. I was like, okay, that's cool to know. And it was actually on my exam. I actually ran into that one on my exam, so that was a free point for me. Hopefully that becomes a free point for you guys too. Don't get tripped up trying to figure out how to troubleshoot whatever the problem is they lay in front of you. If it's prior to 1954, Federal Pacific panel, answer is replace it. All right. Next, last one. Remember this. All of the questions that can be found in the code book on the exam will be pretty much word for word from the code book. So if they ask you a specific question, a code book question, when you find the answer, it will be word for word from the code book. So that means when you find it and you look at the question and you look at the code book answer that you found, they will be word for word. So you will know for sure you got that answer correct. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So just know, if you get good at navigating the code book, which you should, when you find the code book answer, it will be word for word. It won't be kind of like it. So you're like, well, this kind of fits, like a puzzle piece that you're trying to smash in, almost fits, but it's just like a little too big. It will be word for word. You will know that is the answer. So that is why you guys have to get comfortable, get familiar with navigating the code book and navigating it quickly, as I always say, because you could know that you got an answer correct because you're like, nope, word for word, I found it right there. And as you're going through the code book and you're answering these questions and you're seeing it word for word, that's going to build your confidence as you're moving forward, especially if you're not letting yourself get tripped up by those time-eating, time-wasting questions that they put in there. So with that said, I hope those help. I'll give you a quick recap on what those were. The first is, or I should say the first two, is before the time starts, because the time does not start until you press start on the exam. Tab up that book. Put those little sticky tabs in sections you want to find quickly. Also use that scratch paper to write down equations or numbers or whatever it is that you want to remember quickly so that you do not waste time trying to remember an equation, trying to remember a specific number. So use that scratch paper wisely. 3, don't spend longer than a minute 30 seconds on each question. Don't waste time. Trust me, you have more time in the end to go back and look for them. 4, if you have a question that is about troubleshooting a house built prior to 1954 and there's a Federal Pacific panel in the house, the answer is replace the panel. So that's a free one for you guys. Lastly, remember all of the questions on the exam that can be found in the code book will be word for word from the code book, so that when you find the answer, you will have confidence. You know that that is the answer, and that will give you a lot more confidence when you're looking for answers and you're like, well, this is kind of like it. It might be right. No. If it's kind of like it, it's probably wrong. You're looking for something word for word answering the question, because they take these questions straight out of the code book. So with that said, I hope that helps you guys. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me. You guys could either DM me on Instagram with your questions, as many of you do, or you could email me at theyoungelectricianpod@gmail.com. Also, I am still working on the free ebook for, passing the Journeyman exam. That has been kicking my butt too with my laptop issues, but it is coming along. It's almost done. I have a little more that I want to add to it before I release it. So, wish me luck in that. But if you want to get signed up for that, you could either DM me your email address on Instagram, or you can email me at theyoungelectricianpod@gmail.com, and I will make sure I put your name on the list to receive that free ebook when it is released. So hope you guys have got something out of this episode. If you guys have any suggestions for future episodes or topics you want to hear about, then feel free to use that same email or DM me on Instagram to share what you think I should talk about, or if you think I should have a specific guest on the podcast, feel free to drop that there too. Also, lastly, please leave a review for the podcast. It helps us out a lot, as every podcaster says. And a rating, because I do want this to reach more people, and I want to help as many electricians as I can just get forward in their career, have that confidence, have that self-esteem, and more than anything else, make more money as an electrician and get the most out of their trade and out of their life. With that said, have a good one, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.